Hey everyone, it's Robert over at Burton Racing. We're going to do a new product introduction video for you all. This is a product we've had a lot of requests, a lot of suggestions about due to the success of our fuel pump upgrade harness. This is going to work the same, except it's more based on your radiator fan application. This harness itself has 6 different variants. It's universal, although it is built mainly around the Honda Acura platforms, the legacy chassis like the 90s Civics and the Integras. It fits multiple motor applications all the way from your regular D series, B series to K series, but it's also very universal for guys that are adding a radiator or a new fan setup to an existing build that may not even be import based. So this is our harness here. It's very short and sweet. Standard, we have our sealed relay box here. We have a relay, 20 amp fuse. This harness uses all 12 gauge wiring, so we can effectively supply the correct current without overheating the actual wiring that's going to your fan motor. Bracket for chassis mount. Power supply line. This is typically going to go to your battery or your underhood fuse box. It has a ring terminal on it, which makes it pretty universal for other applications, as well as a secure fit, and its low profile. Running over to the radiator area, we have our factory style radiator fan connector for the legacy Honda chassis right here. Now what this means is you'll unplug your factory connector and plug this guy right in, just like you would with our fuel pump upgrade harness. We made this plug and play for the Honda chassis, but if you need to run this on a universal chassis, we do have this connector available separately, and we'd love to get it outfitted on your build. Now, we also have a DTP connector, which is a Deutsch style power connection for ground with a ring terminal. Now, this supplies the 12 gauge power and ground to the new fan or your existing fan. We have 6 variations for this harness. That is what makes it plug and play or universal to your specification. So when you purchase this harness, your universal options are going to be plug and pin connection. So for someone that's really modifying their chassis harness and they want everything to have a nice fit and finish, they may want to use this for their custom application. For those that aren't as in-depth with the build, they might want simplicity. We have a 36-inch flying lead. So basically you can plug this in, run this over to your fan, cut the size, and then crimp it, butt connector, or use any universal connection you might need to secure your power connection to the fan. Now, for our more OEM applications, D series, B series standard pretty much have the radiator and the radiator fan on the passenger side of the car for US vehicles. So we have a 6-inch adapter that'll plug straight from our radiator fan harness to your OEM fan. So what this harness does is, instead of just upgrading the actual wiring to a larger size, we're actually supplying more voltage to the fan. So when you purchase a fan, an aftermarket fan, it's rated just like the fuel pumps. It gives you a 13.5 volt rating, and that's rating is cross-referenced to a specific CFM value, how much the fan flows. So what happens is, you're not supplying 13.5 volts, you're actually supplying 12 volts. So you're not using the fan to its potential. What this harness is going to do, it's going to allow you to run the fan off the running voltage of the car and the charging voltage. So whether it's directly from the battery or the underhood fuse box, you'll really be seeing 13.6 typically to around 14 volts with a healthy charging system. So even if you're running an upgraded fan or an OEM fan, what happens is, on the OEM fan application, if your chassis harness was damaged or you have a circuit malfunctioning, this right here is going to be your solution, and it plugs into the OEM setup. No cutting, no splicing, ready to run. You upgrade your fan, you're running a nice aluminum radiator. Now you have a slim fan. We have a SPAL style 2-pin T-type connection here. So now you don't have to do any rewiring. You just have this adapter, and it runs to your high performance SPAL fan or equal slim fan model. Now what happens is a lot of these guys go to a K-swap setup, and what we've seen is you have two options. Most guys move the radiator over towards the driver's side, so now the fan connections are no longer on the passenger side. Or what they do is they run a full core radiator, but they relocate the fan as well to the driver's side, because on the K-swap you have the intake manifold that depending on the type of bounce you have, the engine height, you may have some interference there. So what we've done is you use your standard harness, and we have a 36-inch lead for both applications. If you wanted to save money or you wanted the reliability of an OEM fan, we have a 36-inch lead, goes from our fan harness over to factory style Honda fan. 36 inches, reaches across the radiator support. It has a nice fit and finish, and it's something you can rely on. Now you have a performance application, you're using a slim fan, you need more room, or you just wanted to upgrade a higher CFM. Now we have this 36-inch adapter in the T-type 2-pin spowl style connection. So those were our variations that we have for this harness that make it plug and play and also universal to nearly any chassis. We're going to show you in the next clip about how to install this on the car and how simple it can be to add to your build. So here we are out at the car to do our on-car installation of our radiator fan upgrade harness. Typically our power connection is going to take place at the underhood fuse box. So here we have it attached with the eyelet to our alternator charging wire. This will ensure we're getting our charging voltage of roughly 13 to 14 volts. It runs over to our relay housing. Remember, this housing is weatherproof. It's completely sealed top and bottom. So if it gets splashed or anything, it's not going to be a big deal. Now, most of the Honda chassis and a lot of other makes and models are going to have several bolt holes around the shock tower location. Typically OEM harnesses are mounted here. Now this one has one right here, an OEM harness mount, where we could double up and slide this under it and get the bolt through. For more clearance, we can remove the relay and we can get right to the bolt hole on the mounting bracket. Then we would run our connections over to our radiator fan area. So here we are at the radiator fan area. We have a ground ring terminal, which we need to establish a ground at. This application here, we have a good ground for our transmission ground area. Now we can also run this over to one of the several bolt hole locations that are already threaded in the frame rail. We have our two connectors. Then we have our OEM connector from our original chassis harness. We have it disconnected. We're going to plug it into the matching OEM connector here. Now the relay knows when to turn on and power our fan. Whether you're using a thermistor or ECU controlled output, it's going to function just like stock. So you can have the safety of two switches, or you can only control it with the ECU if you want to bypass the thermistor switch, or you can run it with a temperature operated switch that's directly mounted into a radiator pipe. It'll open the circuit and then your fan will turn on at whatever the switch is set to. So we have our DTP connector. This needs to run over to our fan. As you see, I have a generic slim fan on this vehicle. So we're going to the DTP to my 2-pin spowl style connector. I have my adapter here, and then I can make my connection here. So this can be mounted and tucked in away. I have the radiator overflow relocated right now so you guys can see better in the video, but this can really be tucked up any way you see fit. It can be zip tied, or you can get a wire fastener and you can mount this how you want. This is a nice little Raychem loop right here, so it's going to be real abrasion resistant, just like the rest of the looming and heat shrink we use on the harness. So this is going to be real safe if you want to pull it through a firewall, where you're going to have it laying on a frame rail. It's going to be really abrasion resistant. But this is how the harness works. This is how it attaches. Keep in mind, if you want to run this on any other vehicle, you can simply deep in here, plug it into an OEM connection, or we have these connectors available so that you can do a splice into this connector. So you're not just limited to
Honda chassis or the older style legacy chassis, such as the 90s Civics and Integras. You can update these for newer cars. If you're wanting a bigger fan on your vehicle that actually runs a true CFM, just keep in mind, depending on the make and model, the wiring and the pin locations and the color of the actual wiring may vary. So when you run it, make sure when your fan turns on that if you have the fan at the back of the radiator, you have it pulling the air through the radiator. If you invert the wiring, it's going to want to push the air through instead of pulling it through. That could be an issue. Back in the day, we have ran polar fan setups that mount on the front of the radiator, and it will pull the air through if we had space limitations in the actual engine bay. That's not very common these days. Just keep in mind when you wire up the fan not to invert the wiring, and to test the wiring and confirm that it is wired correctly and you are pulling if you need to pull.